Okay, is this on? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second 5-on-5. Thank you, Justin. You could put that on the microphone. Have you? It's our first applause of the year, I think. Thank you. Oh yeah. This is our second 5-on-5. I believe our first one was March 27th of this year. We're happy to host this one, and I will, well, let's do the call to order first. Carolyn, you want to do the town council first, or? Yeah, what's wrong with this thing?
Are they all like this? Hold on. Test, test?
Testing.
Yeah.
Testing.
This is what happened when Andy's not here.
Yeah, want to try?
Testing? Nothing.
Yeah, because I wanted to hear while you did it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, nothing. Better? Better? No. Should we grab?
Testing. Oh.
Not so loud they can hear you on Facebook.
Hello.
In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting, adequate notice of a joint meeting, Livingston Township Council, and November. Town, south of the specifically. And the Livingston Township.
Tell him to turn his mic on. It's working. It's working. Turn your mic on now.
Hello? All right.
Now that needs an applaud. That needs an applaud.
Do you want me to reread it? You want to do the pledge? Okay. Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you, Jared. Okay. We still need a roll call, Carolyn.
Roll call.
And,
Test.
ooh,
I'm on. Roll call for the Township Council. Councilmember Boktani.
Here.
Vieira.
Present.
Klein.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Meinhardt.
Here.
And Mayor Anthony.
here.
Ms. Arnett? Present. Mrs. Charles?
Present.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mrs. Gong?
Here.
And Mrs. Kemka?
Here.
Okay. We're up to the workshop items. The first one is the update on development projects. I believe that's for Barry Lewis to give us an update.
Is that working? Okay. As the community is aware, over the last several years, as part of the ongoing affordable housing litigation, the council, part of the settlement, was required to zone a number of properties for housing. And recognizing that that has the potential to have, meaningful impact on the Board of Ed, we continue to work with the Board of Ed, provide them. We have developed a spreadsheet that contains all the projects that were zoned as part of that settlement It's constantly updated to show where they are, whether they've gotten planning board approval, whether building permits have been issued, if they're under construction, when the projected certificate of occupancy is. We also, and some may recall from a meeting a while back, took the Rutgers did a study, a pretty comprehensive study of a lot of developments in the state to try and give you an idea of how to project the number of school-aged children to come out of any particular development. So we've applied those standards. We've also done some real-world study of some of the projects in Livingston, found that we seem to run a little bit ahead of that Rutgers study, so we have kind of a factor for that. At present, the totality of all the projects that have been approved using the Rutgers numbers projects to about 280 kids. That's over roughly probably a 10-year build-out and spread across 12 grades. Currently, there are 3 that are under construction, one on Oakner, one down at the corner of Northfield and South Livingston Avenue, and one is just completing over behind Ambulatory Care Center. We will continue to do that. As far as the 4th round, we're working very closely with our planner and our township attorney to evaluate our obligations under the 4th round. The good news is the number came in a little lower than we originally anticipated, and we also, as a result of our settlement in the 3rd round, have excess credits that will account for a number of those units. As with the 3rd round and the 4th round, we will continue to try to the greatest degree possible to zone for 1 and 2 bedroom and smaller units, try and limit the number of school-aged children. Again, we will continue to have a very open dialogue with the schools so they can plan appropriately and anticipate when these developments will come online.
Thank you, Barry.
Can you just talk about a little bit, for the 3rd round, how many units were there and how many credits are we expecting to go into the 4th round?
Yeah, so the total under the settlement agreement, total units, I did it. Hold on a second. Well, I have that done by the school-aged children. So the projection was 286. It's roughly 1,000 units, of which 20% were affordable housing units. We came out of the settlement agreement with approximately 130 excess credits, which we don't know the exact number, and we're working with our planner, but it's going to be in the mid 400s for the 4th round. So the 130 excess credits will come off the top of that, leaving 300, give or take, for the 4th round. And again, those are affordable units. Now, frequently in the developments at a 20%, that means 5 times that number, total number of units. We are, again, going to try and maximize the credits that we can get. And one of the projects that we have recently approved has special needs housing, which obviously doesn't have an impact on the school, but gives us a credit. You also get a full bonus credit. So for each unit of special needs affordable housing, you get an additional bonus credit. We're also going to maximize the use of 55 and over units, which obviously will not have an impact on the school as well. So we are making every effort to try and control the number of any potential school kids coming out of these units, as we did in the 3rd round with the 4th round as well.
I just want to add, if I may, statutorily, the UHAC provides that 30% of the low and moderate income units must be 2-bedroom, and 20% of the low and moderate income must be 3-bedroom units. So the township has no discretion when it comes to the affordable housing units and the bedroom distribution. We only have some discretion when it comes to the market rate units. And like our township manager said, we do all we could do to limit the market rate in the bedrooms, but when it comes to the affordables, part of the requirements are that they're 2 and 3 bedrooms, because part of the affordability and part of the goal is to bring more kids, low and moderate income residents with children to the school systems.
Just as a follow-up, I think, to both Mr. Cantor and Mr. Lewis, is that when it comes to the affordable side, correct me if I'm wrong, but how Barry said that when we have the apartments for the for the adults with special needs, that actually then will downtake our number of 2 and 3 bedrooms on the affordable side as well, which is what we also can do to, we ask the developers to do that, and it also helps us lowering the 2 and 3 bedrooms that we're statutorily mandated to provide.
So, two questions. The first one is, can you just remind me the factor you upped the Rutgers study by?
I mean, it's sort of anecdotal. What I did was I did the Rutgers study, but then recognizing, I think the Rutgers is across the state, stands to reason, at least speculating that the more desirable your school system, probably the more likely you may generate more school kids. So we looked at the existing at the Hillside Club, Parkview, a number of the single-family neighborhoods, and they actually built and occupied, and it looked like the Board of Ed was cooperative and provided us with a number of school-age children coming from those addresses. No personal information, just raw numbers of students. It looks like it's roughly a 60% markup over the Rutgers number. So if Rutgers has a particular number, then you multiply that by 1.6.
1.6. Thank you. Have we looked at our existing 55 and olders for certainty that there are no students coming from them? And we make a blanket statement that, I mean, and I get that it would be limited, but I think to say none in today's environment feels just, a bit of a stretch.
Well, legally, they're not permitted to have anyone under 18 living in them. That's, whether somebody is or not, maybe that's something that we should collaborate with the board to cross-check those addresses of our 55 and over and have you make sure nobody's coming out of those, because legally, they're deed restricted and they're not supposed to have any kids coming out of them.
I concur with our township manager. I mean, you should have an address of, if you have an address of a student who resides in 55 and older, then they shouldn't be allowed to attend. I mean, they're not allowed to legally be residents within the 55, and they wouldn't qualify for schooling. It would just be like if they were out of town. I'd be like saying, are we sure that there's no out-of-town students coming to Livingston Board of Ed and putting false addresses or putting addresses and they don't live? I mean, we possibly don't know all the. If someone's committing a fraud, we're probably unaware of it.
Yeah, I just think for the purpose of completeness. And hopefully that's a 0, and then it's a non-issue.
Just one other question, Mr. Lewis, about the timing. You mentioned a 10-year period. Is that for all of the development projects that are on the spreadsheet that you shared, or is it limited to the ones that are currently approved?
No, so on the spreadsheet that we shared, which are our obligation under the settlement is to simply provide the opportunity to zone projects, to provide the opportunity. We're not required to ensure that they actually get built. It's sort of an estimate as to how long it would take to build out. That covers a 10-year period of compliance. The fourth round has prospectively going forward 10 years. So some of those, any future zoning to meet our fourth round some of it be delayed. What I'm saying is based on when we signed the settlement to where there's 3 of them that are actually in construction now, recognizing and knowing when they're going to get CO'd and then when they get to full occupancy. A number of them have the zoning in place but haven't even come to the planning board. And some we have no, we have not been approached to suggest that anyone's actually looking to develop those properties at this time. So it's not guaranteed that it's 10-year, but that's our best estimate over what the duration of having all these projects, if all of them. Some of them we have reason to believe may never get built, which might be a good thing as well.
Just one more question about the affordable housing and over 55. So from the over 55, we do still have the 20% affordable housing units in there, right?
That's correct.
Which will feed the schools.
No, they're 55. You have to be over 55 and low and moderate income. So there's still no school kids. There's an option under the Federal Fair Housing Act where you can permit a percentage of non-age restricted in a development. None of our currently occupied 55 and overs are allowing anybody under the age of 18. So the affordable housing units are affordable units for 55 and over people.
So there is at least one here that says the planning board, it's under planning board approval, which will have 20% under 55. So we do.
That was done, yeah, excuse me, that was done, is that the one on
East Mount Pleasant.
East Mount Pleasant? That was done as a request of one of the local houses of worships, because it's very close within walking distance. And so they requested 20% to be under 55. And we do assume that members who will be part of that house of worship probably will not be using the school system. They'll be going to private schools. I just wanted to remind everybody here in the audience and people who are watching on Facebook that all of these discussions that we're talking about on the fair share housing units, it's not something that this town council, was, we didn't want, we all agree about, we all need fair share, but it's also part of a fair share for our numbers as well. These were numbers that came to us by our legislators in Trenton, New Jersey, through not only here in Livingston, but throughout the entire state of New Jersey. And so this is what we are cooperating with and going forward with, not that we came out and seeked at these numbers ourselves. So I hope I speak for everybody here on the council or on that.
So there are no more questions on the development project, so we're going to move forward to an update on school enrollment.
Good evening. On the last day of the school year in June 2024, our enrollment was 6,473 students. This is something we track monthly. So in mid-September 2024, we had an enrollment of 6,339, which is a decrease of about 140 students. And that mainly comes from the kindergarten class, which is smaller than the class preceding it and the class that graduated. In mid-October, our enrollment was 3,368, an increase of 30 students over the previous month.
6,000.
6,000.
388.
Sorry about that. This year's kindergarten class is 340 students, about 100 less than I said, a class of 2024. But we can see variations in the classes. So this year's kindergarten class is 340. This year's first grade is 454. Second grade is 403. Third grade is 504. Fourth grade is 455. And fifth grade is 490. And our classes in 6 through 12 range between 497 and 543. So while this class is smaller, it's one data point, and we'll need some time to see if this is a trend. We will be engaging a demographer based on the information the town has provided with the high-density housing that's planning to come in. My experience with demographic studies, there's a whole bunch of variables that go into it. Even though they look at 5 years, generally speaking, in my experience, it's a point in time. That's what we have right now. Things can change within the 5 years that they give us projections.
I found it interesting, and I brought this up at, when we were discussing, that I was speaking to a realtor
this past week who told me, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but I'm going to ballpark it here, that it used to be that in Livingston you'd have 150 houses per month that were turning over. So there was a lot of opportunity for new kids to come into the school system, and now that number is around 40. And that was over, I think, a dozen years or something. I mean, it's really because of the way the housing market and the high interest rates, and there's not a lot of product that's being built in town. You know, we have these new developments coming on board, but when you, aside from those new developments coming on board, it really seems like that maybe this decreased size of the kindergarten class might be like representative of the fact that there's less housing stock turning over, and I'm wondering if that's going to continue in the future.
I really can't comment on that. You know, if that low housing stock is a one-year trend or a several-year trend, you know, again, we'll have to look at that and see what history tells us.
Mayor? Oh. So based on the numbers, is there anything that indicates that it was a COVID blip from a few years ago where the numbers went up? Or is it too early to say that it was a COVID blip? Or what is it really that, you know, I mean, you've done this for many, many years now in other districts. Is there any feel that, you know, why these numbers are like they are?
These children in kindergarten were born before COVID, so I don't think we'll see a COVID decline or bump until a year or two.
Okay. And the numbers of the kids who moved in during, are there numbers that show during the COVID years, what age groups, what grades, I should say, were affected the most with increases during the COVID years?
I don't have that information.
So I just have one question. None of these right now take into account any of the buildings that have gone in, right?
Correct.
So the 1,000 units have not been contributing to this number yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
The process for expanding schools is long. So once you have a plan and present it to the public, and then get a passed referendum, districts don't expend funds or that much funds into the planning of it. So if expansion is needed, it's going to take a year, maybe longer, to develop the plans for those expansions. And then you have the bidding process, and then you have the construction phase, which is can be longer than the development of the drawings. So you're really looking at 3 to 4 years from when we say go, if everything goes well.
I'll just mention, I don't have, my internet's not working in here, but I believe our numbers, our student enrollment numbers went down during COVID. We had some families that withdrew their students out into private schools. So that was something that we did see during that time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. That's great. Because, you know,
I just don't have exact
No, I think all this is really kind of interesting because from the council perspective, we sat up here the last few years during the fair share discussions that went on and the approvals that, again, we didn't have much of a choice to say yes or no on based on what was coming out of Trenton, and heard how overcrowded the schools have been and were. So that's why it's kind of interesting to hear some of this now based on all the information that we heard as a council from a lot of the parents that were out there. Not from the Board of Ed side, but from the parent side.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember. So prior to COVID, we were on an upward trend of students. We were growing. Yes, and Janice is correct. During that 1 year of 2020, we went down because we had students pull out. However, in the years subsequent, prior to this school year, that trend shifted and shifted upward, right? So the rate of growth in the schools did change in the post-COVID when we had a significant number of folks moving out and a significant number of folks moving in. This is one data point in this current school year. right? And comparing June to October is not really the right comparator. We have to look at June of '24 to June of '25 to see how many more students we gain over the school year. Because if you were to look at September, October of '23, you might see we might potentially be more in line with where we are. And so I think what's important to remember is the schools were growing, the population was growing. Yes, we had a 1-year downward, but then the trend shifted upward. And let's also remember, while it is down at this hour, where we end the school year is really the important comparator versus where we ended the prior school year. So, and we obviously gained a number of students just in the first month of the school year. So I just want to make sure that we're all aligned on how we're looking at the data.
Mayor, if I may?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to add that, that the fourth round did add some criteria. If you lack sewage and water, that could be a criteria to limit your affordable housing. But school capacity is still not a criteria, and the council still has to build affordable housing. It's a requirement of the statute, it's the law. Towns that have fought that obligation have not won. They haven't been successful. And school capacity is not a criteria in the fourth round, and it wasn't a criteria in the third round. So it's unfortunate, and I think the legislatures got it wrong, because they look at our sewer capacity and they look at our water capacity, because obviously you don't have enough sewer, you don't have enough water, you can't bring residents in, but I think they should have looked at also the school system, and it's unfortunate that they didn't.
Dr. Fishbein?
Yes.
Is there any patterns you notice? Because like Seth, Mr. Cohen had said, it looks like it went up 50 in the first month, and if that averaged out, it would be, by June, it would be well above last June. Is there any typical data that does it really happen in that first month, October, and maybe then there's another influx like during the holiday break? Because it was down about 134, but quickly was down to only 85 between June and October. And would that, looking at past patterns, is it reasonable to think this June, like Seth was saying, may very well be above last June?
Yeah, we districts tend to grow, especially districts that house their third and 4-year-olds, special ed programs. So those children age in at birth, at their birth date, not at, the October 1st date of enrollment. So we'll tend to grow in those areas as kids age and qualify for those programs.
Yeah, I had 3 kids in the Pride program that started a staggered, start date through the year. Yeah, based on the birth date, right? Any other? Yeah.
Just one thing, Mayor. So Dr. Fishburne, one quick question about the enrollment vis-a-vis number of elementary students in different schools. And I know balancing happens depending on the area or depending on the facility and availability. Can you address, and maybe this is the third agenda item, which is a long-term facility, but in Burnett Hill, we do see some temporary areas that is required outside of school versus other elementary schools not. And I do get some of the questions out there saying, if we see numbers going down, how are we seeing this in comparison to having to build something temporary outside of the school?
Right. So like I said, I think, the kindergarten number going down is one data point. So I wouldn't start making predictions off of that. We do have temporary facilities, which are very nice at 2 of our elementary schools, and that was due to space issues.
So it's mostly balancing, basically.
Yes, it is balancing. The district also has a policy, what they call soft borders. So if we see an area based on the board's guidelines for class size, new families that move in may not go to their neighborhood school because of the class size issues in that particular school. And we make every attempt to place them in a school that's close to their home.
Mayor, I thought Councilman Klein brought up a very good point, and I'm wondering whether or not any studies can go further with that, meaning that if there's not houses for sale or not a lot of houses for sale, that may mean that there won't be any more students coming in. Is there any way of having some sort of reports or having the people who are taking educated guesses on our enrollment look into that? Because that clearly makes a lot of sense. If a house is not for sale, most likely no new student is going or coming out.
So that is part of the demographer's job, to look at that. And they won't just look at this 1 year, they'll look at that data point over time. So if 2024 is the year that only 40 houses are available to be sold, they'll also look at years in the past and make predictions based on that.
If I just
Thank
put
you.
some color on that. I mean, I don't know that there's anything in the recent past that's comparable, only because, a lot of people in town are sitting on mortgage rates that are below 3%. And as soon as you move, you lose your mortgage, right? So you're kind of locked in by your good luck in getting such a low mortgage. And that's kind of what's paralyzed the housing market. And I don't think there's been a recent comparable situation in terms of, the mortgage rates being so low and then running to so high so fast. I mean, I'm not sure that there's a historical comparison to make for that. So, maybe they have a way of estimating it, but it'll be tough.
That's why I'm not doing it, someone else will.
Dr. Fishbein, is there anything else you wanted to address about the process for establishing a long-range facilities plan?
Sure. Jessica, the business administrator, and I are new to the district, so we spent the past few months touring the schools with our facilities manager and meeting with the principals. We received the in-process and proposed high-density housing spreadsheet with the town, and we will share that with the demographer, and I'm sure that person will be in touch with the town manager and planner. So we've also been reviewing the long-range facility plan that was developed with community members and administrators and the board last year, and starting to hold discussions with the Facility and Finance Committee of the board. So we're currently reaching out for a demographer to do the study. We'll also be looking at the plan, and when we decide on a plan of action, we'll definitely be sharing this with the long-range facility committee members who were on that group last year, and with the community. The plan is to have a final plan and possible facility referendum within 2 years. Any questions?
Yeah, I do. I'll go with one question.
Councilman Baftani.
So I'll make a couple of statements, and then I want to understand, in description of the process that you described, Doctor. We talked about the list of development plans that Barry went through. It has timelines, estimation. Yeah, some of them may not get built, but some do. And if they have, there is a timeline about it, estimated, right? And then we have the continuous increase or decrease depending on what all numbers we discussed about. Mm-hmm. So there is a fair amount of estimation process that can be done. What I want to know is, in this long-range facilities plan, which seems to be, if I understood you right, is 2 years out, are we expecting nothing coming in from now until 2 years, or is that baked in? How do we risk mitigate it? That's my first question. Meaning, in terms of what we have today, what is going to happen in certain amount of time based on the development list of development projects, and how you see that long-range facilities getting built, and what's the process about it? Timing, of course, finances, and estimation, if you can help it understand that.
If I could just ask clarifying, when you say nothing coming in,
No, what I heard was 2 years, I thought. Is that a correct understanding? That 2 years it's going to take to build the plan and sort of put it in motion?
within,
think that's for the
within 2
referendum.
years. And when I
Within 2
say
years,
put
okay.
in motion, then you have to present it to the community in the form of a voting referendum. And that referendum then has to pass. And when it passes, then the detailed drawings have to be done, which takes, as I said, a year to maybe 18 months. Then you go through the bidding process, and then you do construction. So you're really years out before a student would be sitting in a seat in a new part of a building.
Which is exactly where I'm coming from.
Yep.
Is that if the initial process is 2 years, and then you go out and start working on it, right, which is the execution part of it.
Yep.
And in the meantime, we have this development plans, which has been in books, I think in the whole of last year, was all of the projects coming in, and the projections were happening. Are we in the initial part of that process? Are we slightly trying to catch up? I mean, I'm just trying to understand that.
No, the board and committee of community members spent the entire last year on a long-range facility plan, and that plan has different options that could happen. And what we have to do is to make sure the options that we pick are options that will fulfill the space and educational needs of all the students.
Yeah, no, fully appreciate that. No, 100%. The concern that I'm hearing, and not to belabor much, but I just want to make sure the point is getting right across, is that community has heard, and we all have heard, we all have seen these projects going through the pipeline for over a year now. And we are in the process. How are we sort of describing the whole process, the plan, and say, we are just about to start? Is that the correct statement, first of all? That we are just about to start the planning process, we are in the initial phases of planning process, we are deep into it, 2 years later, we have a draft. I mean, that's the kind of more substantive statements I'm looking for.
Yeah, as I said, they spent, the district spent the last year coming up with multiple options of how we can meet the needs of our students. And now we're going through those options to I guess, toss some out that aren't viable, and to make sure that we're making the right decisions. So based on these reports, the planning reports for high-density housing, now we have it, and we can provide it to a demographer to make further estimates.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up? In your estimate, when do you think this would go to the voters?
2 years?
2 years. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Fishbein, you were clear with the 2 years referendum, but you got a lot of work to do in those 2 years, right?
Yes.
To know what goes on that referendum. Okay,
Yes.
thanks. Dr. Fisher, I sat on that. I think there was about 9 different options on that long-range facilities. I mean, there was a lot to look at there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, we're up to update on transfer of Monmouth Court. Barry?
Yes, so for the benefit of the public and anyone watching that may not be, I'll just briefly. Monmouth Court was a school-owned building. It's roughly sort of in the area, the northwest northwest quadrant of South Livingston Avenue and Northfield Avenue, kind of right behind the Sweet Basil's shopping center. It was a school-owned building. It was operated as a school many years ago. At some point, the school didn't need it. The town apparently had a need for it. The school conveyed the building to the town for $1, and the township has since owned it. And now, more recently, with some of the school space demands and growing enrollments, inquiry was made. Over the years, the school then took occupancy of the second floor, and there's been ongoing discussions about the school retaking not only occupancy, but ultimately ownership of the whole building again. The council has expressed a willingness to consider that. The school board has agreed that we'll work together to provide alternative locations for some the recreation activities that are housed there, perhaps at other school locations. One of the challenges was that the Monmouth Court, the entirety of the property was listed on the township's recreation open space inventory with Green Acres, which precluded us from conveying it and also put certain restrictions on it. Initially, we were feared that we would have to go through what's called the diversion process, which is fairly time-consuming, also can require us to offset any acreage that we want to take off the Rossi with other acreage. Fortunately, over the summer, we were able to work with Green Acres, convince them that the school building part of it, not the 2 baseball fields, but the building part of it should have never been on the Rossi because it's always been occupied for non-Green Acres approved uses. So we got permission from Green Acres that we can subdivide the building and the parking lot and stuff associated with the school building, and they will adjust our Rossi and take it off the Rossi without having to go through diversion. The township awarded a contract to a surveyor because a survey was necessary, come up with a meets and bounds description in order to execute a deed to convey it. The field work for the survey's been completed. Spoke to our township engineer. They expect the final map within the next week or so. We'll then shoot that down to Green Acres, assume, get their sign off that that works. And then we would be in a position at that point, if the council were so inclined, to convey Monmouth Court back to the Board of Ed.
Mr. Lewis, just one question about that. Do you anticipate in this process any obstacles in the transfer of that building? Because one of the things that I think will help us, at least in small part, with the space constraints in Livingston Public Schools is being able to plan for the use of that space for going forward during the course of the school day.
Yeah, no, as I indicated, what I thought was the biggest potential sort of legal logistical challenge was this whole Rossi Green Acres issues. We've got it in writing from Green Acres that they will amend our Rossi without having to go through diversion, and we will take that survey that's being completed, and as soon as Green Acres signs off on it, we'll do a minor subdivision, probably do a courtesy review by the planning board. It'll become its own separate parcel, block and lot, and then all it would be up to the mayor and council, who would have to authorize the conveyance of the property, but legally I don't see any obstacles.
Thank you.
So it would be fair to assume that we would be on time for the district to take potential ownership of the building for the start of the 25-26 school year?
Yeah, I would certainly think that you're talking about next July 1, give or take. Yeah, I don't see that as an obstacle, and if there were any reason, I'm sure the mayor and council, if the decision was already made, you could take occupancy of it in any case. But I think certainly we could be in a position to have the conveyance done before then.
Right, just to be clear on this, they don't have to physically own the building to be able to use the building, right? I mean, if the council, I think, I don't know if I think I'm speaking for all of us, all want the Board of Ed to avail themselves of the building, according to an agreement. And even if you're not physically owning the building, if it's something that the town needs for best use, it's certainly something that we would want to help with.
We currently use it as a alternative high school.
Right, but that's the point. It's not gonna, it shouldn't change.
Yeah, I think the interesting estimate would be whether we need any modifications, right, to that facility in order to really use it. To Seth's point, I mean, if what is ready to use means, I mean, if that needs additional work, we should estimate that in. I think that's the best part.
And the purpose of the question is simply for our planning. the odds are there will be no change in its use for the 25-26 school year of the current second floor. But as we continue into the work on the long-range facilities planning, ownership of that building will matter for potential modification to the first floor, right? And so that's why I asked the question, because as Dr. Fishbein laid out, that would be within our consideration timeline.
The next item is the Livingston Public Schools bus depot.
Yes. Years ago, the district considered locating all school bus vehicles in one location. There was a plan drawn up to put it behind the central office. Those plans weren't realized, but we are reconsidering the use of that property to have all our buses in one location. Now they're parked throughout the town. One thing that we've changed in the plan and talked in planning for this is to do a road out to the community center so that the buses wouldn't go out onto Foxcroft into those neighborhoods, and they'd exit through the community center and go out that way. And I think this would be better for Foxcroft Drive and that neighborhood. So we plan to re-engage the engineer who looked at the initial option to see what they can come up with for the option with the road out to the community center. We really must have a secure location for our vehicles so they're not scattered all over town, and that we have control over the location.
A quick question, Mayor. So one quick question, Dr. Fishman, right here. One is, it's a two-part question rather. One is, where do we park right now? Where our buses are? I think I see them in the Northland Pool area. I see them in Heritage. Do we have multiple locations? How do we?
They're at Heritage, they're at the pool, they're at the community center, and anywhere else? Yeah.
I think, and they're relatively evenly distributed between Northlands and the parking lot, significant number behind the community center in the very rear of the property, and then on Heritage. Those are the three locations.
Thank you. And the second part of the question is, I've seen other towns where outside parking facilities are used, meaning there are lots that are used outside of town nearby, which kind of, centralize all of the buses while the town works on, or township, BOE, whoever, right, works on the actual plan to build a depot, if you will. I mean, that's part of our agenda. Is that something that was ever considered to sort of, reduce some pains? Because some of the, for example, Northland Pool, pretty dense area. We have a lot of folks, residences around it. There could be other areas, other challenges with Heritage, where, for all logistical reasons, may have residents having some difficulty as well. So I just want to know, is there a temporary plan was thought about till we finalize or find out the solution?
Well, I think what we have right now is a temporary plan until we can find a place where we can secure all our bus vehicles in one location. The construction is challenging, but it's not overwhelming. It's something that can be done and was planned to be done.
Right. Outside the town's centralized location was not considered as a temporary plan?
Outside the township?
Other towns do that. Outside of township, there's some open lots, a lot of school districts use that. away from us, but that's like something you could rent. I'm not solutioning here, but I'm just asking for.
I'm unaware of districts who have a fleet.
Okay.
Who park them outside of their town or off their school
We can
property.
take it offline. I'll show you
It may
some
be like a private vendor who does
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was thinking.
Possibly, yeah.
But not a school.
Yeah, we own our buses, correct, Dr. Fishman? Yeah, I've seen, I don't know if it was Kevacon or where it's a private one, and what Councilman Butani's saying, they could go there for the
Yeah.
night.
I mean, ownership
The
of
difference
buses.
is the district owns the
Correct.
buses.
I mean, ownership of buses really doesn't play, but again, we can take it offline. I'll show you some of the examples that I saw, and we can see.
Okay, thank you.
The staff is also employed by the district as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it has nothing to do with a private contractor, the
No, we-
employees or the equipment or the vehicles?
Any, I'll call it overage of routes that we can't handle ourselves, we do outsource that. But those buses are in a private company in their bus depot.
Okay, thank you.
So just one comment on something that Dr. Fishbein said, and would certainly ask for and hope for the township's cooperation is, Dr. Fishbein mentioned the desire for a connectivity from a potential new lot through the community center. That obviously would require your approvals. I think this is an important project. This is probably a very long overdue project for this community. The fact that our buses have been parked in multiple places, as well as, aren't parked in probably the most secure of places either. By securing that connectivity through the community center, we could also mitigate some of the concerns that the neighbors around the Heritage property would have. And obviously, Heritage is, given its traffic flow, especially in the mornings and the afternoons, would be a really difficult spot for all of our buses to maneuver through. And so would certainly welcome and appreciate any cooperation as we, continue to think through this project.
I appreciate that, absolutely. I agree with you. I think reducing the traffic on residential streets, Foxcroft and Hillside Avenue, certainly makes a lot of sense. As soon as the plan, and I can speak for the rest of the council, I think as soon as we see a plan, I'm sure there is something that we can definitely see through. We have a Vision Zero. We have a lot of fundamentals in place to really study and assess the traffic flow as well. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, would the idea be for the buses to leave that way but not come back that way, correct? Because coming back that way would interfere with a lot of the daycare after they drop off, let's say, their morning. I know we're just spitballing here, I totally get that.
The bottom line is it needs to be explored, but it needs to be explored with the hope of cooperation that is a possibility, right?
Is there an estimated number of buses that we own, or you own?
30 plus?
30 plus buses?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And Seth, to your point, I think I speak for the council, there is cooperation. That was brought up the other day when the 2-on-2, as someone who lives in the area and has neighbors, I think it is a long overdue, right, Seth? Is that what you said? Like a bus depot, and of course, we're willing to, think it through as far as, one way in through the administration building and out through the community center, if it lines up and if it's possible and all that. So I think we only just started, President, on our 2-on-2, right? We started talking about that option.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about that as one possibility.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just out of curiosity and for explanation. I think it makes a lot of sense to avoid going through the neighborhoods, but what about, and this may just be that because traffic's coming in at the same time, but why can't buses leave through Foxcroft as opposed to going through the neighborhood behind?
I think we can
Well,
direct that to.
Because if it's coming through the community center, then it's just coming out onto Hillside. But we already have a road that comes out onto Hillside, which is Foxcroft. So I'm just curious, why is that not a viable option to just use Foxcroft on the way out instead of going to Wingate and all the ones in the back?
because I think some coming out of some buses coming out of Heritage go into the community if they have to get to that side of town. This way, it forces them outside of I just don't know the
Northfield
community yet.
or Northfield.
Windward.
Yeah.
So when I see those buses in those areas right now with leaves that were just removed, it's you know, it's very tight.
I'm sure we can discuss this more. It seems like if everything's coming out through the community center, then you're not going to get to that side of town anyway. You're still coming out to Hillside. So that's
Right,
what I.
and they'll
yeah.
have to go a different way.
All right, we'll obviously we have to work on it, but.
Yeah, it's an idea that we were willing to explore and see if it logistically, the ingress, egress all works out. And, you know, there's a lot of car traffic there as well. So I know that was the first I had heard of it, and I think the council is willing to cooperate, work with you, and see what the options are. Right? Okay, thanks.
But I do have a question. For the time being, the buses that are over in Northland, are they staying at Northland or are they being moved out?
They're staying.
They're staying.
I just think that, and I know there's going to be discussions before the springtime, but I know during the springtime on weekends, I think we had a discussion at the end of, I think during last year, that on the weekends at Northland, starting in May when baseball and softball season starts, and tennis season's in high gear, and pickleball and cricket, the cricket pitch is being used as well. That's when there's really a backlog. So maybe there's a way that we can talk about it. I know we have some time before the warm weather will hit again, unfortunately. But we can talk about that. Maybe just on weekends, we could find that the buses aren't parked at Northlands for Fridays, because that's really the weekend that's the issues we have. But I know we have some time to talk about that in the future.
Yeah. And which is where I was heading with my earlier point, is that it doesn't matter who owns the buses. Of course, we own the buses. But there are places where an outside lot can be nearby, can be considered, and house our buses there. That can be rented. The bus ownership does not change. But it's just the parking area, which is outside and away from the choke-up points, as Deputy Mayor described. I mean, we all hear all of that, and I think we communicate each other, I think, between board and council, but I think that's the kind of solutioning. Maybe we need to take a look till we reach the permanent solution.
I think the security of the buses is critical. That we know where all our buses are. Close by to the district. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
So I think when buses have had to be moved because of activity during the weekend, we have responded and have moved them. So I think when issues arise, the township should contact the district and they can work on changing where the buses are located. But the purpose of exploring a permanent home for the buses is primarily for the security of the buses. So I think we should allow the district to explore that and come back when there are some solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And that would include something large enough for all 30 or so buses. So we
I think
resolve
so.
this problem
Yes.
of them being all scattered throughout the town.
Yes.
Okay. Next is the update on crosswalk and sidewalk grants for safety. Barry, we received a lot of good news on that this year.
Yeah, we, two things. A couple of years ago, we applied for and were awarded what's called a Safe Routes to School grant. Our application was to replace all of the sidewalks from South Livingston Avenue on Northfield, from South Livingston Avenue all the way to the Circle, both sides, all new concrete sidewalks, going the full length of Northfield on both sides, as well as going down Hillside from Northfield to Foxcroft, which currently doesn't have it. because that's federal funding, it's a bit of a process. We were also awarded additional funding for the design component of it, so all in, it's about $700 and almost $800,000 in funding. The design company, we awarded the contract to GPI. They're working with the state. The goal is to have those plans all completed and approved and out to bid shortly after the beginning of the year, with construction to be next year. Ideally, I think optimally during the summer to minimize the impact on schools and people using the existing sidewalks. So that one is moving along a little slower than we'd like, but that's because you've got the federal government and the state government involved. We also recently submitted a grant under what's called the Safe Streets for All program. It's federal funding by the Department of Transportation. The purpose, it's a planning grant to provide funding to allow us to develop what's called the Vision Zero plan, which is a comprehensive analysis of the entire town, pedestrian safety, bicycling safety, car safety, come up with recommendations and a plan, which can include additional bike lanes, sharrows, crosswalks, lighted crosswalks, activated stop crosswalks, particularly in some of the school zones that we've looked at. So we think we put together a good grant application. Right now it says they're going to be announced in November, so we're into November. They haven't announced, they didn't pin down the date, but we're anxiously awaiting the award. And hopefully if we get good news on that, we'll move forward quickly with doing an RFP to get the consultant on board and get that process going. So I think both of those will have a tremendous impact. And once we're under construction on this round, on the original one I was talking about, the Safe Routes to School, we'll be eligible to apply for another round. They do this every year, but you can't have one open, and until you've started it, you can't apply for another one. So hopefully by next year's round, we'll be in a position to apply for another one to look for another key section of town.
Are there other areas, Mr. Lewis, where you're looking at putting in either lights or stop signs?
Well,
where
I think
school
that's what,
crossings are?
yeah, ideally, certainly I think we're aware of and gotten some recommendations from our traffic division, but hopefully if we get this Vision Zero grant to develop the Vision Zero plan, that's a planning grant to hire a consulting firm that is experts in this and allow them. There's definitely been consideration. There's a crosswalk by Wynwood on Northfield, which we wind up having to actually man with a police officer every day during school let-off and drop-off because of how dangerous that is for kids to cross. It's certainly been brought up by the council and by the Board of Ed. I don't know if it's my mic or someone else's. That might be an area that'd be appropriate for one of these activated, you've probably seen them where the pedestrian will push a button, flashing lights stop, the traffic stops, you cross. Again, we have a police officer and crossing guards there only during specified hours. There's after-school activity. There's a lot of other reasons. And quite frankly, even just non-student pedestrians, any of these improvements would be beneficial. So we're certainly looking at any and all, but hopefully we're going to get good news on the grant and let the experts kind of guide that process.
The extensive Safe Street to School, extensive Safe Street to School is part of it, right, Barry? That's the full study, and the Safe Street to School is part of Vision Zero.
Yeah, the Vision Zero plan, the funding would come under this, it's called Safe Streets for All. It's a comprehensive safety plan to cover pedestrians, bicyclists, the interaction between bicyclists and pedestrians and automobiles. It's a very comprehensive plan. I've actually looked at a couple of the plans developed by other communities, and I think it would serve us very well and help us make the right decisions as to where to put those types of improvements.
I mean, at this point in this same conversation, I would like to quote a very successful initiative that happened in a collaboration with Board of Education, Township, Harrison School District, and actually the principal, a lot of the administration from your office, Dr. Fishbaum, and Barry, the town manager's office, police. we had an issue in the last 5 and 5 of safe street to, or safety of kids around Harrison School. I mean, that's a glowing example of how when everybody works together. I was talking to some of the residents, and the problem was really nicely resolved, and where the parents were happy about it. I think that's fantastic. I think till we get to the larger goal, the end goal, I think these are the initiatives that'll help. Just want to comment on that.
No, I'd like to thank, the town, the chief came out with his people to look at it, and definitely Dan Garcia, the principal, and the committee the town put together to look at this and come up with solutions. It really seemed to work, and the way I can tell is I haven't received any phone calls about it.
Can you just describe a
I
little
haven't
bit
either.
what you did in that area?
Well, really, they put in signage, repainted some of the no U-turn areas or no parking areas, and just made it really visible for everyone, and also did some, I'll call it education, where the police were present and reminded people to pay attention to the signage and the lines that they painted.
Mr. Lewis, I know you talked about the Wynwood and Northfield crossing. Is that a county road?
Northfield is a county road. The county generally is cooperative. They more often than not, we just ask their permission to put an improvement in. They generally give the permission, but they won't pay for the improvement. So when
They
we talk,
won't pay for that?
because they've got so many communities and so many demands and limited funds. So, but they've been a good partner, and they generally, certainly when it relates to traffic and pedestrian safety, have always been pretty open-minded. So I would be optimistic that if ultimately there's a recommendation and a plan for an improvement there, that the county would give us permission.
So have you considered a non-binding resolution asking to look at the traffic there? Because sometimes, I think if you would do that, they will come out and do the traffic study and participate.
We could certainly reach out. I was kind of hoping to see if we get this grant, and then that would be part of the overall analysis. But given that obviously the sensitivity of that particular location, I can certainly reach out to the county engineer, and we have a very good relationship with them, and see if they can come out and start that process.
So so the county commissioners actually might be able to step in if we were willing to pass like a non-binding resolution saying that this is a problem.
Okay, we can
for
definitely
us.
look into that, and maybe jointly with the Board of Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just before we move on to the next one, Dr. Fisher, I do want to say that was really a nice collaboration on the, what we called the Pedestrian Traffic Safety Committee, kind of an ad hoc committee. And I just want to give you a shout out, Parul, a shout out. Let's see, a few other people. We had Officer Donna Majuri was on it, Chief Marshutz, Lieutenant Nicholas Collins, Sergeant Carl McNamara, Captain Joseph DeAndrea. We did have Principal Daniel Garcia was involved, Caton, and myself from the town council, subject matter expert Dan Cerrucci, and then we had residents Hannah and Joe Vieira, Sarah Klein, Rachel Tobin, and Barry Lewis and Adam Lerner. So that was an issue back in March, and we had some people come in and talk about it, and these 5-on-5s, we work well together. So I'm going to be the one plugging both of us right now that have worked out well. And you're right, I have not received any calls since that committee came up with those solutions as well. So thank you.
Sorry, I'll start again. We're asking the town council to do an ordinance to reserve some parking for staff by Livingston High School. It's really, as you face the school, there's on the left side in the circle, there's about 4 or 5 spots there. And then up on Madonna Drive, further up past where the buses drop kids off, to have some designated parking for staff. It appears to be around 20 spots, which would really help the high school.
Just to confirm, Dr. Beck, I think we talked about it in the 2-on-2. These spots are currently parking spots right now, and all we're just asking is just to change the designation of who can park there. We're not adding new spots, or we're not
Right.
changing any spots, correct?
Yep, the high school has parking passes, decals, that they provide for the staff, and they would be used. And then we do an educational program for students to say that, that they're no longer available for them.
I think that's certainly reasonable, but Barry, when we had discussed this previously, I had mentioned to you that there was the master plan for the Memorial Park, and there was that different configuration for spots around the oval that created a lot more spots. Obviously, parking's always at a premium around the school area. I don't recall from the plan if there was construction needed to widen the oval in order to create more spots, but essentially it was a back in and a diagonal. And the people who had put the plan together for us, showed that it would create a lot more spots. It would take a little bit of, people have to get used to the new traffic pattern, so to speak. But it was a way of getting a lot of spots in that area. And I just think we should just check into that and see if we think that maybe that's low-hanging fruit to kind of help with the parking problem around the high school.
Okay. Okay, we are now open, seeing that we covered all 7, we're open. Jared, do we need a motion or no? Just, do we need a motion? Do I have a motion to go into?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so we approve the public comment. Are you okay with it? Okay, we are now open for public comment.
Mayor, 3 minutes? We need to, well, Russ needs to know, he's.
3 minutes, thanks, Jared. I was going to do the average, but there are 3 also.
Hello, Rob Stecklow. I live in Heritage next to the Board of Ed building, so I'm obviously very interested in the parking situation that you described. And just so you know, I've lived in town since 2002, and I've been dealing with the buses ever since, so it's not a new problem. The plan that you mentioned, resurrecting, came up in 2017, was actually shot down by all the residents in our area. So I represent everyone on Wynwood, Foxcroft, Westgate, Colonial, et cetera. We actually, I think we're dubbed Crystal Hill. We're waiting for the mayor to make that official, the neighborhood.
Crystal Hill section.
I think the concern at the time was not just the traffic, which I think last time the Mr. Gianficaro, I think is his name, he said it would be about 120 extra bus trips a day in and out of Wynwood and the areas. And also that, and this is his quote, in a windy day, the homes in the area will smell fumes. So that won't change even if you were to have the buses go out in a different area. It's also, and I wrote in my notes here, that in 2013, the township first discussed a new DPW place to house all the township vehicles, which would have been a perfect location to put buses outside the residential area with all the things that buses would need. And apparently that's not, that's not going forward, although I see the new DPW site is being built. So concerned that was an opportunity that was missed. You mentioned other alternative locations. At the time, we had suggested reaching out to the mall. I've seen all sorts of, utility vehicles parked there at random times. Leasing space. There's also vehicles underneath the power lines on Eisenhower. So I do feel like there's been other opportunities to look at places outside the residential areas, as was suggested. None of that had come through. And then, obviously, the most concerning part is there was a bus stolen last year, so we know that the buses have to be secured. So we're sort of concerned that, this has been ongoing. And the last thing is, and you mentioned some ideas about maybe having buses, go through an alternate route, which I think could be something to discuss with the residents. I would be concerned that nothing stays in the heritage lot. There's also sheds there, there's vehicles parked there, there's trailers, permanent trailers that are parked. So we would want some assurances that nothing were to stay there, and then that the buses would go out the other way and potentially out the other way on Foxcroft as well. So thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, Madam President, Justin Alpert, 56 Amherst Place. What a disaster the Murphy administration has been. The Democrats have been in absolute power, and the localities have had no power as they watch Democrat insiders profit off of imposed affordable housing mandates. There's been some momentum for the Republicans to gain some ground, and hopefully next year we can switch the drumthwacket over to Republicans. This community needs to plan for healthy growth. We need to pick a rate of growth, a healthy rate of growth. It should probably be somewhere between 2.5% and 3% per annum. And that way, if you have 10,000 households, you know that you need to grow at a rate of, 250 households per year, whatever it's going to be. If this side and this side can agree on a proper rate of growth, you can then begin planning for proper growth. And of course, that's going to be a constant. If that rate of growth is a constant over the course of time, you can then look at the cash flows associated with healthy growth and work on turning those to come back into the community and start realizing some real savings there. There has to be a master plan that makes sense to a healthy, growing community. We did not have that at the beginning of the third round. As a matter of fact, most of that work was done behind closed doors. The fourth round looks like it's more of the same. We can do better. Next point, the 2-on-2s. The 2-on-2s are an end run around 5-on-5s. The town council was quite surprised to read in the paper the minutes from a 2-on-2 meeting. Of course, people who've requested minutes of these 2-on-2 meetings have understood that they weren't being held. The 2-on-2s do not engage the public. These 5-on-5s are a proper forum. We should have more of these, less of those 2-on-2s. Soft borders have plagued this community for decades now. It is a symptom of unhealthy growth. If we're planning for healthy growth, we should need less buses, and we should be planning for healthy communities where more kids can walk to school on the sidewalks. Be very careful if Mayor Fulop gets into drumthwacket, because he's going to destroy local public education with county-based magnet schools. And lastly, the buses, we built a RV storage facility in the warehouse district. The warehouse district is being used for all kinds of silly uses. The warehouse district should be for the benefit of the community, and that would be a wonderful place to park our buses. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Justin.
Hi, how are you? Boris Grushin, 7 North Drive. I have more of a list of questions. I don't know if this probably isn't the right forum, but so when we were speaking about the external units built in Burnett Hill, I wasn't really clear on the reason for that. If we have the soft border option, is it just to keep kids as close as to where their neighborhood schools as possible? So I'd like some clarity on that. Do we have, as a matter of BOE policy, a target class size per like elementary, middle, high school? And what is the allowance over that, particularly in elementary, where before we kick in the soft border where we have to move kids from their neighborhood schools out? Do we have anywhere online what percentage of capacity we are in each of the schools within our school district. So I honestly don't follow all of the meetings, but is there any information online, again, about the long-range facility committee, who the members are, how it functions? Because that sounds like something interesting that first time I've heard of. In terms of the time frame of potential build-out, it's really at least 4 years before any real work is done. Meanwhile, the developments of housing, many of which are going to be done in the next few years, because the ones behind Kushner are quite a way in. The ones on Ochsner are, probably going to be done within 1 to 2 years. What is the plan for the influx that's going to happen there? Because obviously, we're not going to build that fast. What is the plan for the Monmouth facility? Like, how will the BOE use it? Definitely a good option because we have it already done, but what exactly is it going to be? Where can we find, as citizens of the town, the list of the high-density developments that are already under construction, ones that have been filed, right? Because then we can see what the growth is going to be. And the last thing is I'm curious as to I understand security is one of the paramount issues of consolidating the buses into one area, but it seems like there's going to be a lot of work and money in building to secure it in one location. Is there not an option to instead secure the 3 locations where they are, which is potentially more efficient, where if they're spread out throughout the town, you're not having everything come from one location going all the way across town and have the resources kind of closer to where they're needed. Those are my points. Thank you.
Hi. Lisa Takuda, 10 North Drive. I just had 2 questions, so this should be shorter. One is, you said, so I was writing notes, 280 kids was the projection over 10 years from the current buildings that have been approved, right? But you also said there's a 60% variation from what data we have for our local things. So is it really 280 that we should be using as our estimate, or is it 280 times 1.6, which is more like 450-ish?
Yeah, if you took the 286 is based on the Rutgers study.
Right.
So if we are using sort of that anecdotal mark it up by 60%, then presumably that number could be as high as whatever 286 times 1.6 is.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that might be a better number to quote, because continue to quote the Rutgers numbers, if we don't believe them, or at least put a range around it, saying, it might be a better way to. And my other question was, so I'm following the numbers, 2 years out before we have a plan, then you said 3 to 4 years after that with all the other steps, so we're looking at 6 years possible before anybody gets to sit in something that we've built. Are we panicked about that, or is that like, oh, okay, that's all right because of where we're at? That was my question. That's it. Thank you.
I started working in the Livingston School District.
You have to come up to the microphone. It's going online. It's going on the internet.
Maybe bring the mic up.
There you go.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Justin.
I started working in Livingston School District in 1969 in
Name and
various
address, please.
capacities. Pardon me?
Name and address, please.
Elliot Lovey. And I do not live in town. I live in Roxbury. I've been working
All right,
in
thank you. That's
Livingston
enough.
School District since 1969. And this year, for the first time, I am not an employee. My comments, which are going to be brief, do not reflect on anybody in Livingston. I was told by the athletic director not to say I'm representing the school. There was an editorial in the Tribune last week about extracurricular activities, which greatly bothered me. Livingston guidelines, policy 2430, co-curricular activities states the Board of Education will not allow students who reside in the district and who are not enrolled in the public school to participate in co-curricular activities. That was established, I believe, in 2016 by the state. And now it's up to the local district. Well, we in Livingston have this idea that we don't want people participating in co-curricular activities, athletics, anything like that, if they're not enrolled in the school. And I think that's very bad. I really do. We have special programs for non-academic students, students with learning disabilities, but we don't want to highlight our outstanding scholar athletes. Now, it used to be that we did not have a rotating schedule. And now every day is a different schedule. It used to be that these scholar athletes, musicians, actors, actresses, athletes, they would get out of school early. They'd get out by 12 o'clock and go to their special training. And now we do not allow that. And I don't understand why. Why we can have special programs for non-academic students, but our outstanding scholar athletes and co-curricular activities are not allowed to participate. And I think it's time that we look at it and maybe change this policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot.
Hello, Dennis Duffy, Bennington Road. The first thing, I didn't come here for this, but I heard mention of buses and then like fumes from buses. I didn't hear any mention of consideration of electric buses. So, I don't know, just an idea. The thing I did come here tonight for was, I heard mention of Safe Streets and Vision Zero. We've been sending on about incidents of what looks like dangerous, reckless driving by high school students, you know, going to and from the high school. So, you know, we have speeding, passing on the left when that's an oncoming lane, aggressive driving, somebody trying to pull out of their driveway, and the students will actually speed up and beep to tell the person, you know, stay in your driveway until I'm passed. So I just wanted to know, is this being discussed with, I guess, the Board of Ed, the high school, et cetera? We also had recently, we had kids doing wheelies and speeding on the electric bikes. So a neighbor went to the police about that. And I think that should kind of be like the last resort. You don't want the, you know, police giving them a record, although they said for this household, that was a known issue. You know, they know who they are. So anyway, if you want to open up a dialogue about that, come around to, you know, Winchester, what else? Salem, Concord, Village, Bennington Road, all of those places. Come around, talk to some of the neighbors. And then I'm sure it must be happening the other side of the high school as well. Because, you know, if the kids are speeding on our side, it's not like they're training and, you know, you can only do it over here. You know, it's going to be like, let me put my foot down over here as well. So just to, you know, talk to people about that. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make one comment, at least about something that took place this past week, which started actually as a result of the 5-on-5 that we had in March. We had mentioned about the elections that just took place, and you know the crowd that was expecting at the polls on the day of, and we asked the Board of Ed to reach out to high school kids to participate during the election process. And over the summer, I had a correspondence with Dr. Fishbein, and it really took off from there. And I just wanted to thank the Board of Education for all their help in getting all those kids involved. I think they had a great day. And while we're all here, I think we all owe a big thank you. The whole town owes a big thank you to our town clerk, Carla Mizuko, who's here as well, and her whole staff for the great job that was done on Election Day. I don't think there were any... Thank you. I don't think we heard any issues, there was no negative comments at all, and I know part of that was due to having the high school kids there as well helping. So I think that was a great, great collaboration between these two bodies, so thank you.
I would just add one quick note to what Ed just said. The high school students that I spoke to who were working on the polls couldn't believe they were getting paid. They were so excited to volunteer to do it. So it was just, it really ended up being a really special experience for a lot of them. And the fact that they made money on it, it was a shock. So it was, very happy for them.
Yeah. And speaking of...
They got paid pizza, and Carolyn went out of her way and shopped for them. They all got a tote bag, a drawstring tote bag that I believe said Poll Workers Rock on it. LHS Poll Workers Rock. And green, with the proper color. So yes, thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, everyone on my left side here, the district that helped out on that collaboration. It was great. The students got rave reviews, not only from the people sitting next to them, the adults sitting next to them, but from people voting as well.
Yeah, I would like to add one example to that. 100% agree with what Deputy Mayor and Mayor said, and Sean said as well. One of the example was a kid was preparing for appearing in the test same evening, and that kid worked since 5:15 a.m., dedicated worker, all the way till the end, and then appeared in the exam. I mean, that's applauds. I mean, that's really a good amount of work that happened with the kids, and amazing for the LHS kids. Awesome job.
And may I add, because we have a diversified student population, the fact that we have a diversified student poll worker joining us this year, they actually help raise the awareness of the diversified population about voting, about the whole election. So for that, kudos to the students and the parents and all the town council and the school district. Thank you.
Well done. Any other public comment? We've now reached, you want to call adjourn?
To adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor on this side? Aye. Okay, any opposed? No? Okay, thanks. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.